know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. This week's episode, we are talking about the year 1994, and we are tackling I would say this is probably a lesser-known record.
Yeah.
From the time period.
A little off the beaten path.
It has its fans. If you know your stuff, you know what it is. But as far as everyone knowing what it is, yeah, it is a little bit more deeper cut. I did put up a poll on our social media just asking people in general. I just wanted to get like a temperature gauge. It wasn't so much that I was planning on changing our approach to what we choose, but I wanted to know if like people do prefer when we talk about lesser known or less popular records or the more popular albums, like the bigger albums of the time. And the overwhelming majority were like, lesser known, less popular records are more interested. There were a few people who were like, no, I want to hear you talk about the popular albums. So it kind of gives me an idea of where to go. We can, the big records get the clicks, that's how you guests and big albums is how you get people to listen.
But we've seen spikes for episodes where we're talking about something fairly popular that doesn't necessarily translate to more listeners across the board. So it might yield an occasional new consistent listener, but I don't think it's regularly translating into, we talk about big albums and we get, a 20% increase across all episodes, going forward or anything like that. So
that's true.
It's,
if anything, we tend to find new, like, dedicated listeners when we do cover some of the deeper records. So yeah, maybe there is actually more of a, if you want to build a true audience, maybe the lesser known stuff is, but I want to just do a balance of it anyway. I was just trying to see what people liked in general, but yeah, it was nice to see people do like the lesser known stuff, and we don't have to be like, nobody's going to know what that is. I mean, they might not know what that is, but it should be interesting. I'm more interested in talking about some of that lesser known stuff in general, just because, we've been doing it for nearly 380 episodes and, talking about big stuff. We still haven't hit a lot of big records, but yeah. So I was just curious about that.
We'll get into that on this episode.
Oh yeah, big one. We're going to be talking about in a minute. But if you head to patreon.com/punklautapod, it's where you get all of our weekly bonus audio. Last week we did a 2-in-1. I'm Listening News of the World, where we talked about the news stories and the music we listened to over the last week. We are coming up on, we talk about it on that audio. I am moving. Dylan is on vacation. There's a lot of time where we're not going to be able to record together. You may have noticed, as this episode is going up after the week we skipped, we put a Patreon bonus episode into the main feed for people to sample. Hopefully you all liked that. But next week, there won't be another regular episode just due to the timing. I am going to try and record a guest list episode, though, and throw that into the main feed. So that'll drop on Wednesday instead of a regular show. And I'm going to try and do a solo bonus audio as well, but no guarantees. I'm moving. It's a lot. So I can't really, tell my wife, hey, wife, I'm going to go record something for 2.5 to 3 hours. And while we're trying to get out of this house by the end of the month. So apologies for the lack of new regular episodes, but we'll be back on track once things get a little settled. But we have our $5 producer tier, which gets your name said on the show every single episode. So shout out to our producers, Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. Shout out to Zach in Oregon. Shout out to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. And shout out to Dave Brown, my co-host on Bookenders, as well as the writer of the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty. And yeah, if you want your name said on the show, sign up at that $5 tier, and you get to vote in the producer tier that determines the EP that we do once a month, which one of those should be coming up shortly within the week or two of this audio as well. And then we have our $10 tier where you choose the album that we devote an entire episode to, which is what we did 2 weeks ago with the From Ashes Rise Nightmares album. All right, so 1994. It's a big year. We're post Nirvana. Nirvana's gone by 94.
Yep.
But their impact is still being felt, especially when it comes to who's getting record deals, what's coming out, what does alternative radio sound like, what is MTV playing. we got a lot of this kind of stuff on here. So what is going on in the year 1994?
1994, there's a lot. I will try to go lighter on a lot of these representations for each category, but we got some power pop stuff going. Weezer does Blue Album. Sugar does File Under Easy Listening. Sugar, a band that never shows up on the punk charts on Rate Your Music.
Yeah.
Despite being a Bob Mould band.
And Weezer always shows up on the punk charts on Rate Your Music.
Yeah.
Despite never being a punk band.
Yeah. I hate it.
Yeah. It's also funny to me that Weezer and Sugar are the same genre right now at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Sugar is like some powerful power. Like there's a crunch to Sugar compared to most other power pop.
We are at sort of a crossover point for emo. Sunny Day Real Estate put out Diary.
Massive.
Huge record. Super influential. Jawbreaker does 24-Hour Revenge Therapy. A little more of an emo core record, but also in some ways leaning towards where they would go with pop punk. And that, I think, plays into a lot of how emo makes that term, how that term makes a transition to like your Get Up Kids and then onward. Jawbreaker is, I think, a bigger piece of that puzzle than
Well, it also
gets talked about.
It also goes in the orgcore direction too. Like Jawbreaker is like might be the proto orgcore band. I mean, I guess Avail is a little early. Some early Avail. Yeah, I mean, I guess some of that Lookout stuff would be called proto orgcore too. But
yeah, and lots of post-hardcore. It's a pretty significant year for that sound. Drive Like Jay, who put out Yank Crime. Unwound put out New Plastic Ideas. Lots of Dischord stuff. I mean, Jawbox is on a major label at this point. Mm-hmm. For Your Own Special Sweetheart. Pony Express record by Shudder to Think, also on a major label.
Yeah, they'd already signed by this point.
So post-hardcore is mainstream in 1994. Just
kind of
doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know what we need? This Craig Weldron guy. He seems like a star.
Yeah. Weirdo, glammy, post-hardcore band is like, Sony wanted this? Very funny.
1994, pretty solid year for noise rock. A lot of the big names are represented here. Shellac put out At Action Park. Jesus Lizard put out Down. Unsane put out Total Destruction. There's a real early Today is the Day record called Willpower that's really good.
It's funny because, like, yes, this is the same genre, noise rock, but it's like the two sides of the coin of noise rock.
There's like three sides to that coin in 94 because there's like the Sonic Youth stuff too.
Yeah, I guess I think of that as something a little bit more
noise pop,
more experimental even in some ways.
Yeah,
because it's like there's the bass forward, big, Albini-ish stuff with Shellac and Jesus Lizard. Clean production too. It's pretty like thin, sparse production. But then you have like noisy shit like Today is the Day and Unsane. It's just a funny little. And then you could still call other like weirder like 31G stuff has a lot of like noise core tags too, or noise core I guess would be the primary difference. But
yeah. And it's a very, very big year for indie rock.
Oh yeah,
lots more than I have listed here. But I just put the big names and like I couldn't cut it down even any less than this. Pavement put out Crooked Rain. Guided by Voices put out B1000. Built to Spill did There's Nothing Wrong with Love. Sebado put out Bake Sale. Superchunk put out Foolish. I don't think there's an Archers of Loaf record this year, but
it's probably like the next year.
Certainly, we're very active at this time.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a Polvo record either. I don't think so, but
feels like there's always a Polvo record.
Yeah. Slowcore is pretty notable sound as well. Low put out I Could Live in Hope. Their first record?
Is the yellow one?
It's more brown, but sure. Codeine put out The White Birch. Luna did Bewitched. That's the guy from Galaxy 500.
Yeah.
Dean.
One of the guys from Galaxy 500.
The one that's not married to the woman in Galaxy 500.
We're doing a really good job with names here. Naomi? Yeah.
Naomi Yang.
It's because they did like Dean and Naomi, right? That was a band?
Yeah, I don't know Dean's last name. No,
Wareham.
Dean is Wareham. Dean is the Luna guy.
Oh, the other one is the one.
You're thinking of Dean and Britta, which is Dean Wareham's wife. Naomi and Damon and Naomi.
Damon. I got Dean and Damon mixed up. Yeah.
Understandable. Skate punk, probably one of the most dominant sounds for punk in 1994. Bad Religion put out Stranger Than Fiction. The Offspring put out Smash. Trashed by Lagwagon. Punk in Drublic by NoFX.
Smash is huge. Smash is like...
Yeah.
It's probably the second most important punk record of the entire year as far as mainstream is concerned.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much as like as creativity or influential, but I guess... I don't know. The Offspring were a super influential band. But they're a gateway band. Super important for the gateway.
Yeah. Tons more. So many more skate punk bands.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big NoFX record. Punk and Drublic, you know. If we were to do an NoFX LP, I feel like that could be a big one that we would consider.
I feel like we have to at some point, arguably.
Yeah, because the only thing we've done was that Koki the Clown EP.
Yeah, that's not really fair.
Yeah, we need to do one of the big ones from them, but God, I just don't like them. It's too hard to make myself choose NoFX.
Really quickly, I wanted to include this because it's just funny to me, because it's like the way we talked about this recently with the Slow Dive record that we did for My Bloody Valentine's Day, but the way the UK just dropped shoegaze in the mid-90s. Starflyer 59 put out Silver. They're an American band. They don't really count. There's like a Pale Saints record, and there's other American bands that were doing shoegaze.
The Americans didn't get the note.
Yeah, they kept it going. And Lush put out Split, which would be a true shoegaze record. I would say that's a proper shoegaze record. The one they do after that is much more of a Britpop record.
Yeah.
But Oasis put out Definitely Maybe. Blur put out Park Life. Like, there's lots of Britpop records.
Yeah.
In 94. And Ride did Carnival of Light, which was their Britpop record. They were like, oh, we're in on this.
Look at this list. This list is huge. What is this?
Twizzy. Rock music. New metal, alt metal, rap rock. I threw them all in one big bag because it's mostly the same. Korn self-titled. A Marilyn Manson record. Helmet did Betty. Failure did Magnified.
I was going to say, before you continue, it was, for new metal, it was Korn, and then no one else until Korn put out their second album. And then it was Limp Bizkit after that. And then there were the bands who were like influential to new metal, which you've mentioned, like Helmet being an influential one, but you got some more influences on new metal too.
Yeah. Prongs, Cleansing. That record
a big
rules.
one. That record fucking rocks. Yeah.
Rollins Band's Wait.
Groovy.
We got your rappy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Biohazard, State of the World Address, 311, Grassroots, Body Count, Born Dead. Grassroots, that's funny.
What's that record? Is there a single on that one, or is this very early 311? Let's see.
That's like their fourth album.
It can't be. It only shows. Oh, it must be their. They must have had some like really independent ones. No, it was their second album.
Their fourth one listed on Rate Your Music.
Discogs or Wikipedia just says music was first, Grassroots is second. Wait, it says independent. Who wrote this art? Who structured this article? They made a separate tag for independent albums for Damn It and Unity, which came out 90 and 91.
Yeah.
Just their studio albums. Put them with the studio albums. What? Oh, anyway. Grassroots, though, does it have anything? Or is this before they're a hit band yet?
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't know these. Yeah.
But
Snuff the Punk is early. I didn't realize that was such an early record.
Yeah. There's some gothic rock stuff that maybe is of interest. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds put out Love In. Some Manic Street Peachers. Millions of Manic Street Peachers.
10,000 Maniac Street Peaches. Is Manic
Danzig's
Street
4?
Yeah, the Doom. They always had that Doom rock tag early on, but that one was very doomy. Is Manic Street Preachers goth? I don't think I've ever heard a single song by them.
Yeah, I guess they get tagged goth rock. I mean, like that Nick Cave record is like sort of a goth rock record.
Yeah, there's that blues,
but it's also kind of like, what do you call Nick Cave? Past the 80s?
Yeah.
Bluesy punk stuff?
He kind of just becomes like the anti-lounge singer.
Yeah. Lastly, hardcore and metalcore pulling in two dumb directions.
Yeah.
We've got Converge's Halo in a Haystack.
Yep. Early Converge.
Very
First
early.
LP?
Kind of more like that Today is the Day record, actually.
Yeah.
A little weird. We got some Groundwork, Strife, Overcast. Christians got into hardcore early, into metalcore early.
Yeah.
Undertow, Focused, Unashamed, all have records the same year.
Undertow aren't Christian.
Undertow's not Christian. It's just because they're one-word names.
I would really not even... there's some metallic elements, I guess. It's post-Earth Crisis hardcore, so yeah.
But yeah, Focused and Unashamed.
Yeah.
I
I think timing-wise, it's not going to work out to do a Christian record for Easter just because of when we're going to be skipping. But I do want to do one next year. We should plan that a little bit more further in advance. But
a spirit-filled hardcore.
Yeah, they have... Rate Music has a Christian hardcore tag. They don't really have a Christian rock tag, but they have like...
They do.
Oh, it's Christian rock. They don't have like a Christian punk tag. That's what I meant. They don't really have that. But if you just put like Christian in, you and I know the stuff that's punk enough that we could use it too that way.
Yeah. And hardcore, Pretty Dumb. Madball, Set It Off.
Madball.
Sick of It All, Scratch the Surface.
Yep.
Slapshot, Unconsciousness.
Very dumb.
And then you've got some straight edge stuff like Refused. This just might be ... the truth. And Batteries, Only the Die Hard Remain.
That's funny. Die Hard Battery. That's funny. They definitely did that on purpose. Well, so I gave you the year 1994, and it's a big year. So what did you almost pick?
So I almost picked Green Day's Dookie.
Yeah.
It's the biggest record of the year. One of the biggest, most important punk records of all time.
Yeah.
And you have never listened to it in full.
I have not. I've mentioned it a few times throughout the years on the show, but I have never listened to Dookie in full. I have probably heard every single song. Half the record were singles on the radio.
Yeah,
and then
they really were.
The other half of the record, you just hear. You just ambiently would hear these songs in like clubs or, riding with people in cars. Like there's plenty of opportunities that I've heard to hear every single individual song from Dookie. I have almost listened to this album in full one time. I have a cassette copy that I put in. I listened to the whole A-side, and then I think I was cleaning, and then when I was done, I didn't flip the tape to finish it, because I was like, all right, I'm done. I think we went to eat or something. And so then I didn't finish the other side of the tape. So I have been very close to not listening to this record. I have heard so many of their other albums, though. I've heard
the funny part.
more than half the rest of them. I've heard all the 90s. I didn't listen to the first two. I haven't heard those two. Those early ones, the Lookout ones. But I've heard like Insomniac, Nimrod, Warning, American Idiot. I've heard some later stuff, like the newest one and the Father of All Motherfuckers. I've heard their worst record. Father of All Motherfuckers. And yeah, just for some reason, never listened to Dookie. I've never been motivated to listen to it. But
Green Day is a band that we've talked about on the show in the past. We've covered records by them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still more records, quite a few more records by them that we can justify doing on the show. Like, I would say Dookie, priority, but American Idiot, the cultural influence of that record.
Noteworthy. It saved their career.
It started the whole emo rock opera thing.
Yeah. Thanks.
It ties in so much with the mall emo, pop punk thing that happened, and really, I think, gave a lot of fuel to keeping that fire going with pop punk as it was probably on its way out from mainstream rock. So, and even still, I think there's other Green Day records we could do on the show and talk about. So we'll get to them someday. Just this didn't feel like the moment to break the streak.
Yeah. I told you, I was like, maybe we save it for the final episode. The problem with podcast final episodes is most of the time you don't know it's the final episode.
Yeah.
So you don't really be able to plan that.
I called you the phenom of not listening to Dookie by Green Day.
And I was telling you, like, I was trying to explain, like, it's not that I, like, actively avoid it. Like, I've just never had the urge to put it on. Like, the closest I got was putting it on that one day, and then I didn't finish it. If I hadn't chosen a format that stops halfway through the record, cassette or vinyl, I probably would have finished it and heard the whole thing. But nope. It's just fun. I told you too, like, I could listen to that record at any time. It could just, like, hit me one day. I'd be like, and I come on the bonus audio. I'd be like, I listened to Dookie. You know, I could. There's no, I am not saying I'll never not listen to it.
I feel like at this point we have talked it up so much that
I think
you just have to decide we're going to do it on the show as an episode when you do it, when you listen to it for the first time. Because I need that to be fresh.
Yeah. The fact that, a guest could choose it, that was always my thing too. Like, if a guest chose that record, we're not going to say no to it. Which that could be a fun conversation too, because then I could explain all of this to them. They'd be like, what? You've never listened to one of the most important major pop punk records of all time? Yeah. It's called Dookie. That's
legit,
the
worst part about it.
It is legit a reason why I've not wanted to listen to it, is because it's called Dookie. So, yeah. Anyway, what else did you almost pick for me?
Notably left off of the metalcore section. I know.
Yeah,
we
didn't skip it.
Mention it. I didn't forget. I couldn't. Unbroken's Life, Love, Regret, the Live, Laugh, Love of metalcore records. I think one of the first aesthetically definitive metalcore records.
That's an interesting take.
It's like, this is firmly metalcore. We're in metalcore now. We have other metalcore bands, but this is a band that, like, they get, like, the wording, the imagery, the sound, all very much in place for a slew of bands to follow.
Yeah, because in the early episode, the first, like, have I done 3 episodes of Metalcore Chronicles? I can't remember. I've done, I think, 90 and 91, and then I did everything before 90. And I think you're right, because, yeah, Integrity's there, they're the inventors of metalcore, but, like, their imagery and their aesthetic is, like, way more heavy metal than it is, like, its own thing.
Yeah.
Yet. And then even the stuff like Rorschach, and that's weirdo stuff. That's not even...
Yeah. It's almost like grindcore, even.
Yeah.
Or,
and a lot of that early metalcore is still very hardcore coded, very Victory Records, in a lot of ways. So yeah, I could see, there's an argument. If I find anything in my Metalcore Chronicles searches, you don't think Firestorm fits that? That does predate.
Yeah, I mean...
All Out War, My Earth Crisis.
There's still something about Earth Crisis, though, that screams tough. To me, metalcore after Unbroken has a little sprinkle of emo. And when I think of, like, the late 90s into the biggest boom period of metalcore into the 2000s, like, I think of a lot of that stuff as having a shade of sensitivity to it. That, to me, Earth Crisis, sonically, yes, metalcore, but they're still, like, they're straight edge hardcore guys.
Yeah, I mean,
they had that straight edge vegan hardcore mentality, that just very rigid, very, like, all the songs are just being tough and tearing down systems. And
yeah. And when I think of Earth Crisis, they're a very hardcore coded band, even though they are, like, one of the innovators of metalcore as a genre. Yeah, I see what you mean.
I think a lot of metalcore from 94 and onward has an aspect of, I'm sad, but I'm mad about it. But Unbroken, I think, still deserves more credit, more attention, more discussion. Definitely want to talk about this record at some point in the future. I wouldn't say this record's outright underrated. Most people who know, but I do think it occasionally gets a little bit overlooked in the shuffle. And I think a lot of that has to do with it. They broke up after this. They didn't last much longer. And they came from San Diego. They weren't in a metalcore scene.
Because there weren't any. Well, Cleveland was, like, the only one, really. Real scene.
York,
Buffalo became one. But
yeah. And then, eventually you get kind of your Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania.
There's a lot of, like,
Indiana
Pennsylvania,
stuff.
Jersey stuff. Yeah. Florida. The earliest metalcore is scattered all over the country, though.
But San Diego, the San Diego sound is...
Oh, it's his own thing.
Drive Like Jehu.
Yeah.
It's arty, post-hardcore, and then also, like, the Screamo stuff. The 3-1G type stuff.
Yeah. Actually, there's a couple different sounds in that area. but
Gravity
Yeah.
Records was San Diego too.
Ebullition?
Maybe.
I think they're San Diego too. Because there's that Screamo stuff from there too.
And lastly, I didn't consider this one super hard. It's one of the more difficult records I considered. Rodin's Rusty. It's a classic of the Louisville sound. I think that it's better than Slant by a mile. Jason Noble would go on and do a bunch of shipping news records that are great. And I love this kind of stuff. It's very much up my alley. I figured there would be story to tell with this record. I wasn't sure. A lot of this stuff, Louisville sound stuff, can maybe be difficult to talk about musically. So that's when I felt like we would be really relying on the story.
Yeah.
And who they are and that scene. And it just maybe wasn't totally feeling it musically this week. So
On the list of stuff that you had listed, that would be the one I would want the least. It's a good record. It's just like, you're right, it is not as easy to just throw on. All right, so I gave you the year 1994. Let's get into it. And you selected for us to talk about Soda Pop Ripoff by Slant 6.
What am I supposed to do? Looking over at you, I really wanna know. What do you want? What do you want? Come on, say something! Don't you wanna know? Don't you ever get a curiosity? Do you wanna be suspended in some kind of burning cold phrase? I really need to know. 'Cause on the other line, I really gotta go. Oh, come on now. Oh, come on now. What do you want? Don't you wanna know? Don't you ever get a curiosity? Do you wanna be suspended in some kind of burning cold phrase?
Some stats on the band. They're from Washington, D.C. and formed in the year 1992. This is the band's debut album and was released February 1994 on Dischord Records. The personnel on this album is Myra Power on bass and vocals, Marge Marshall on drums, and Christina Bilot on guitar and vocals, and was produced by the band as well as Ian Mackay and engineered by Don Zientara. So what made you choose Slant 6? Because out of that list of stuff you sent me, it was the one I expected you to choose last.
Well, I think it's a good record. That's the main reason. I think it's a good record, and I think it deserves attention. And it was just the one that I felt the most like revisiting out of all of these records this week. I felt like there would be a lot to talk about. I felt like there would be a lot more to talk about this record than you would even think there would be. I've definitely heard this record in the past. It's not super important to me. It's not my favorite record from this year by far. There's quite a few more records that I love from 1994. But this felt like something unique. It felt like it was so much its own thing. And I feel like they sit between a few different points, but they don't totally fit in any one of those categories that you could categorize them. So that kind of unique quality really interested me right now, and the relative obscurity of the record.
Yeah, so, what do we call this? This is kind of a weird genre record because a lot of people historically place it in the Riot Grrrl category. And while there are very strong connections to Riot Grrrl, they are not a Riot Grrrl band. We'll get into that. There's actually part of the story. But I guess sonically there's something in common with other Riot Grrrl bands that I think is what kind of lumps them in with it. As well as they get lumped in with post-hardcore too, but it's like it's not really a post-hardcore record either.
Well, they came from such a post-hardcore drenched scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, I don't really think it's a post-hardcore record.
I know a lot of people just call it indie rock, which is like, I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
This indie rock can sound like anything. So it doesn't sound like the indie rock of the day, though. It sounds more like indie rock that would come later, I suppose. But
arguably. I mean, I think there are certain there are certain qualities that I hear on this record that I associate with like your Chapel Hill indie rock scene. Isn't that the name of, I think that's in Sedona. Yeah. So, but it's not quite indie rock either.
Yeah. I mean, really, in some ways, it's a throwback to the 60s. It's a throwback to like 70s. They were inspired heavily by a lot of post-punk. Like the Wipers and Wire were huge influences on them too. So yeah, it's a weird one. So the Also Ran section is kind of strange. So I guess what are we even considering to be Also Rans of this time?
Yeah, I mean, so there's the scene association stuff, and that will come up through the record label. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
What they're doing musically, I mean, I kind of covered a lot of the indie rock, and like, yeah, a lot of those examples maybe don't actually sound that much like this. Musically, it's probably garage rock, garage punk, more than anything. If you could only pick one genre to represent this record, I think I would say garage punk. So John Spencer Blues Explosion put out Orange. This doesn't really sound like John Spencer Blues Explosion.
No.
The Cramps put out Flame Job. Kind of doesn't actually sound like the Cramps either.
No. So there are surf elements to some of the guitar parts, but
Dead Moon put out Crack in the System. That's closer.
that is an influence on them. They did cite Dead Moon.
We've got some New Bomb Turks.
They played shows with New Bomb Turks.
Maybe a little overlap there. 5, 6, 7, 8. That's going too far into rockabilly, though.
Yeah, that's pretty rockabilly. Yeah.
The Trash Women, that's just surf.
Yeah.
The Mummies have a record that year. The Headcoats, I don't actually know what they sound like. They have several records. They're one of those bands that puts out 5 records a year.
Yeah, and still around, still doing it.
So
the Headcoats are like tied to like Holly Golightly, so I think there's like she's part of that scene too, which I think is also tied to a little bit of John Spencer Blues Explosion. So
the Mono Men put out Sin and Tonic. There's a little Guitar Wolf, but they also get grouped in with Riot Grrrl, and we will talk about how they are not actually a Riot Grrrl band. Mm-hmm. But other stuff that gets grouped in with Riot Grrrl, some of it is and some of it isn't. From 94, it's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Heavens to Betsy put out Calculated. 7 Year Bitch put out Viva Zapata. The Gits put out Enter the Conquering Chicken.
Referencing Mia Zapata.
Yeah. Huggy Bear actually is a Riot Grrrl band. Put out Weaponry Listens to Love. Red Aunts, are they properly a Riot Grrrl band or not?
I don't know. I don't know if they are considered a true Riot Grrrl band. I don't think they are, but I do think it's just there was a thing where just like, if it's a band with a lot of women in it, it's Riot Grrrl. It's like, well, that's not true. Yeah, those are the big ones though. Well, okay. Let's tie this into the Dischord records from 1994, because this actually does it. A lot of this label at the time connects to the band. So they released Hoover's The Lurid Traversal of Route 7. Lungfish put out Pass and Stow. And then we have albums by a lot of other people. We have Tone, which was that instrumental band. We have Antimony, which is members of Circus Lupus. We have Rain Like the Sound of Trains, a band I didn't even remember ever hearing their name. This is mid-90s Dischord records, where Fugazi's paying the bills so they can just sign whatever they want. But that band featured Verbal Assault, Soulside, and Beefeater members, so it's people you know. There's Second Thought, there's the Norman Mayer group, and there's Las Mordidas. I have Las Morditas here, and members of Ignition, also Circus Lupus, and Rain. And then the Ian MacKaye produced records of 1994. He didn't do a ton that year. He just did the Lungfish and the Antimony records. So, mid-90s, Dischord. This is where you're starting to get a bunch of bands you're just like, who? And that will just continue to today. That's what it's like now.
Yeah, of these releases, the real essential ones are Hoover and Lungfish.
And I don't even know if that's like an essential Lungfish album, you know?
That's a pretty big one. Pass and Stow?
Yeah, I don't know the Lungfish catalog. I've heard a little, and I don't like it.
Unlistenable.
I don't like Lungfish.
Every few years, I actually thought about this while I was looking, and I very, very briefly considered that Lungfish record, because it's every few years I'm like, should I give Lungfish another try?
I mean, is it going to be the thing that when we're like 50, it's going to click? You know, like, oh, I get it now. But
I don't think so.
I'm coming up on 40 and it's not clicking yet. So
I think I'd rather go listen. I think I'd rather go listen to the Self-Defense Family records.
yeah.
Is this the last goodbye? Do you know the reason why? I really don't need the double-edged knife or deja vu for the rest of my life. I think about it all the time. You can't see through my life. Come on, it's not a joke. Don't laugh in my face when I start to choke. I'm so sorry, but I haven't time. Don't wanna do it again. No, not again. No, not again. No, not again.
Well, let's get into the story. A lot of the story, I was worried when you picked this. I was like, I hope there's stuff out there. And I was looking at the Wikipedia, the Discogs, and I was like, there's not a lot here. And then I was reading reviews and band bios. I was like, not a lot here. But then I found a gold mine. There was an article on Please Kill Me about the entire history of Slant 6. It's an oral history interview. It's between, well, it's not even, that would require multiple people. It's an interview with Bets, who was the interview? It was an interview with Myra and Christina. So like I think it's an email interview because they both say different things. So I think it's kind of like, I don't think they're in the same room answering questions because you'll get different answers from each person depending on what it's about. So a lot of stuff I pulled from came from that article, and it's such a good article. There's tons of meat left on that bone for you to check out. I will put a link to it in the show notes. It's a great article if you want to read more. There's a lot of really fun stories that just didn't really tie into this album. So there's a lot here. So I was really thankful for that article because that was like the Rosetta Stone for this band for me because I was struggling trying to find something. Okay, so the story. Prior to Slant 6, Christina Bilott grew up in Bethesda, Maryland. Marge Marshall had moved to Washington, D.C. from England, which is where she was born. And Myra Power was born in La Plata, Maryland, but grew up on the North Carolina-Virginia border before moving back to the Virginia side of D.C. And Christina joked that years later, after coming back home from tours, she would pronounce words all sorts of ways because she had a Southern accent and a British accent person in the car with her. So, very funny. But yes, Christina played in a band called Hazmat from 1988 to 1989 with Melissa Burkhoff, who also played in the Dischord Records band Autoclave, which featured the legendary Mary Timony, later of Helium, X-Hex, and Wild Flag fame. Hazmat and Autoclave did overlap briefly, and Christina wound up joining the band as well. The Autoclave only played 15 shows ever. So it's kind of funny that this band is thought of as like, oh, a legend. And it's like, at the time they weren't. It's just who was in the band and what they went on to do is notable. Myra Power considered herself a loner and would go to shows at the 930 Club by herself. She would go to goth clubs while underage just to go dance and hang out. And she started hanging out with people in the DC scene and purchased her very own bass from a thrift shop and started to learn how to play. Her first interactions with playing with other musicians was rehearsing and playing fretless upright bass, which someone who's new to bass, that's hard. That's too hard. But she would rehearse with members of Circus Lupus, and that band would go on to be Las Mordidas. So this is post Circus Lupus, but before this other band. And at this time, she also formed a band called Lucky 13 with Chris Bald of Faith and Embrace. And Lucky 13's first show was with Bikini Kill on the rooftop of their apartment. There's going to be a lot of name dropping that happens here because everyone in the Dischord scene was involved in everyone. And not even just Dischord. Bikini Kill were in DC at this time, too.
Yeah.
And
there's like 40 people that made music in DC.
They all knew each other, and they all played with each other in various different incarnations. So this is it. You get ready for a lot of names.
Yeah. They all drove old cars and traded jazz records with each other.
So after Autoclave breaks up in 1991, Christina wanted to form a band that was less weird and more danceable. She's like, I wanted to write songs with normal time signatures instead of these weird Autoclave ones. And she had been told that she should go play with this girl named Myra who loves the Ramones. And so she went down to the restaurant that Myra worked at called Dante's, which was also like run by somebody from a shit ton of Dischord bands. Dante something, I forget his last name, but she went down there, met Myra, and said, hey, you want to play in a band? And Christina had already had the name Slant 6 chosen. Slant 6 comes from the inline 6-cylinder engine produced by Chrysler through the 60s and to the 80s. So I saw another article that said it's the Dodge engine from that time period. And so Christina and Myra then start writing together. And then one night while hanging out with members of Nation of Ulysses, Steve Gambora of the band dared them to play the show they were scheduled to play the very next night. They didn't have a drummer, and he told them that he would play drums for them. So they practiced all day before the show, and they played 3 songs, and they say it was a mess. They then began playing with drummer Rachel Carnes, who was an Olympia, Washington musician, who was staying in D.C. at the time, staying at the Embassy. The Embassy was a famous punk house in D.C. with like tons of people lived in it at the time. Christina lived in it at the time, and I think some of the Nation of Ulysses guys did too. And they talked Rachel into playing a tour with them, opening for Nation of Ulysses, but Rachel had actually gone back to Olympia. So then Christina, Myra, and Mike Fellows of Rites of Spring got into Christina's Datsun and drove all the way from Washington, D.C. to Olympia, Washington. They literally drove across the country in a Datsun. I think it was like some 80s model Datsun too, like an 84 Datsun. And then they toured all the way back down to Washington, D.C. When they got back to D.C., they hoped that Rachel would stay, but she went back to Olympia. She would go on to play in the bands Kicking Giant and The Need. So then James Canty would wind up playing drums for them immediately following the breakup of Nation of Ulysses, but it was very brief. And Myra and Christina started working together in a restaurant called Food for Thought, which is where they met Marge Marshall. And there's a funny story that Myra tells about working in Food for Thought and how Lux Interior and Poison Ivy came in, and how like Poison Ivy was like, oh, I love your outfit. Like she was complimenting Myra's outfit. And then she said that Lux Interior had like really long, clear nails. Like his fingernails were really long and really clear. And she's like, I just remember him like ripping into bread and eating it. There's some funny stories about the restaurant in there. In that article I mentioned. I recommend checking it out. But this restaurant is where they meet Marge Marshall. And they began playing immediately and started sharing the stages with the likes of Fugazi, Shudder to Think, and Unrest.
This is the thing
Yeah.
about this scene. All of these people, oh yeah, you should go on tour with Nation of Ulysses with your brand new band.
That no one's heard.
You're getting in a car with a guy from Rites of Spring and driving across the country. You're meeting Poison Ivy and Lux Interior. And like, it's normal. You're just like, it's not really even that big of a deal. You're just like, oh yeah, Ian MacKaye knows who you are. You're just like every new band that ever formed in DC from the years like 1986 to 99, probably. Ian MacKaye knew who they were.
Personally.
Like you would meet him and like, he'd be like, oh yeah, we're not going to sign you. I just don't have too many records coming out this year, but you should do it. You should put it out yourself.
Yeah, he did encourage people to put stuff out on their own labels all the time.
Start your own label. That's the point. That was the thing. His whole thing was just like, everyone should start their own label.
Yeah. And a lot of them did. They all had their own labels. His own sister had her own record label. Amanda MacKaye had Sandwich Records. And like Guy from Red Spring had DeSoto.
Peterbilt?
I think that was... Or was he Peterbilt?
DeSoto.
Peterbilt and DeSoto were also Dischord adjacent labels in DC at the time. I don't remember who ran what, but maybe it's Peterbilt. Yeah. It is just like everybody knew each other from the scene. They're all playing to each other. So, okay. we talked about this a little bit. Slant 6 are very, very closely associated with the Riot Grrrl scene, despite the fact that they are not a direct Riot Grrrl band. Riot Grrrl, remember, is a philosophy that you have to adopt. It's not just, we're women who play punk music. That there's a lot of rules. Sonically, though, there is a lot of similarities to Christina's vocals with, I believe it's Corin from Sleater-Kinney. So there's a lot of similarity vocally there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say they're drawing from a very similar place musically as Bikini Kill and Bratmobile.
Yeah, I would say they have a lot in common with Bratmobile musically.
Yeah.
Probably more Sleater-Kinney than Bikini Kill, but Sleater-Kinney really wasn't even that much of a thing yet by this point, because Corin was still in Heavens to Betsy at this time.
Yeah. And Sleater-Kinney is really more of a hardcore band early on.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, in the more like, yeah.
DC post-hardcore kind of way, yeah.
Yeah. Christina lived in a house called the Embassy, and this was, like I said, a famous punk house. And in 1991, the band Bikini Kill came to Washington, D.C. They were already a band. People already knew who they were. They came to D.C. to, play music, because it was a very active scene at the time. And so Christina claims that she was there when the term Riot Grrrl was coined. There was apparently some riots going on due to a trial where someone was, like a black person was killed, and then there were some riots in DC at the time. I don't remember the exact, it feels terrible to not know the exact name of the person who was killed, but it's happened so much in American history that, this is post LA riots 92. So this happened a lot, very much how in the US after George Floyd, there were a lot of other similar situations that sprung up. And so there were terms going on, and there were riots happening in DC at the time. And someone just yelled out in the house one day, "There's a girl riot." And then somebody yelled across the house the other way, "Riot Grrrl." And that's where the term came from. And Christina was in the house when the term was coined. So she then goes on to work on the first Riot Grrrl zine. She says she contributed a top 10 list and one other piece to the zine. But then when they reprinted it later, they took her pieces out. So her pieces are only in the very, very first edition of the first Riot Grrrl zine. And she says she went to the first Riot Grrrl meeting in DC, and she had the idea of starting a record label called Riot Grrrl. And the topics were very serious. They talked about assault and a lot of that kind of stuff. It was a very serious discussion. But then while things were winding down, she did throw out the idea of forming a label called Riot Grrrl. Then someone there, she wouldn't say names, she wouldn't name who it was, but someone there then called her an assimilationist and that she wanted to do things the guy way. And then Christina got mad and had nothing to do with the Riot Grrrl scene outside of playing some shows with bands and appearing on compilations. So basically, she got bullied out of the Riot Grrrl scene, essentially.
You're acting like a guy.
Yeah. It's just man, these scenes, man, they're just like this. It doesn't matter what scene it is and how good the intentions are. There's always, somebody in there that's shitty. So they would appear on comps next to bands like Huggy Bear and Tri-Bait, and they would play shows with them, too. But generally, the band didn't identify with the aesthetic of Riot Grrrl, and they never really felt like they were part of the scene, despite being an all-female band. They didn't think of themselves that way. And this is true. We talked about this a lot. Babes in Toyland, they get lumped in. Luna Chicks get lumped in. Neither of these bands are Riot Grrrl bands. They're just bands made up of all women. And they just were putting out records at the same time as Riot Grrrl was happening. And so, very different kind of thing.
I don't wanna listen to your violence. I just wanna sit in silence. What you think is cool is fucked up. What you said to me was shocking. You told my voice was mocking. What do you wanna reach me down? Expired violation. Expired violation. Expired violation. Your presence is a real invasion. Expired violation. Expired violation. Expired violation. It's a fucked up situation. I know you think you'll ever do me.
Being an all-female band, they were kind of treated as a novelty at the time. And a lot of people were like, who's this chick band opening up for Fugazi? Which was a thing that would happen at shows. And then, the men in the crowd be really gross and, try and, touch. Betsy tells stories, not Betsy, Myra tells stories about, guys trying to like touch her legs while she's playing. So she started to just like play facing her bass amp or like facing Marge on the drums, and just so these guys wouldn't touch her. And yeah, so they did release their first 7-inch called What Kind of Monster Are You in 1993 on Dischord, and spent most of the rest of that year touring, and then decided, hey, it's time to do an LP. So they went into the studio in October of 1993 at Inner Ear Studios. And yeah, the recording session I think is fairly uneventful. Ian basically like taught them, I think it was specifically Myra, how to fit syllables into a song. She said like that was really instrumental because I kept tripping over my words because I had too many syllables, and he figured out a way for her to help, sing it. There is a song on the record called March 6th. It's the last song where Christina plays drums and Marge plays trumpet because she could play trumpet. And it was released on vinyl, CD, and cassette. And the CD version includes the debut 7-inch as bonus tracks, as well as the streaming version, I think, has those too. The one I listened to had those bonus tracks. And then in the same year, 1994, they appear in the film Half Cocked, which apparently is a music road trip cult film that features the band's Rodan as the main. It's a strange story. Like, the premise of the movie is this one band pretends to be this other band who is actually Rodan in the movie, but they call themselves something different in the movie. But then the other
Truck Stop.
Yeah, the band's called Truck Stop. Yeah, but the band Truck Stop is portrayed by Rodan, the band. And they appear in the movie. Polvo, Unwound, Helium, and more bands all appear in this movie. I don't know how easy it is to find. I didn't search for it. It might be one of those things that's just like lost to the sands of time, but maybe it's one of those things that's just on YouTube. I don't know. It'd be worth considering for a future Masterpunk Theater, I guess. But
It might be on Canopy?
my library doesn't have Canopy, so I can't use it. And I have reviews and lyrics we can go over later. We could do that a little bit later. But let's talk about, what'd you feel about this record? I mean, this is when you knew. You already picked it because you knew it already.
Yeah, so I had listened to this record before. I think probably it was definitely on a deep dive. One of my years recently. I may have heard some stuff earlier than that, but I don't have as distinct of a memory of ever listening to this record prior to that. But I recalled generally what it sounded like, but I don't think I had distinct songs that I remembered in particular from the last time I listened to it. But I remember listening to it before and being like, this is pretty good. Like, this is good, and it's kind of its own thing. I didn't feel like it was directly comparable to any one thing. And we've kind of like discussed that and laid that out already so far, but coming back to it and listening to it again, that still sort of rang true. It's not an entirely one of a kind band, but there's not a lot that I feel like has this combination of elements. And it was good to revisit it. And it was good to be more familiar with it on a second listen, because I think I appreciated it more having already had a basic idea of what it sounds like. And I think I have a better idea of what works for me and what doesn't work for me on the record. I would still not rate it super high for the year, but granted, there are some incredible records from 94 that are very, very hard to top.
Strong year. Yeah. It's one of those rare years that's just like, wow, so much came out. Because if you look on the years on either side of it, they're not nearly as strong as 94 is. It's just funny how that happens. But
I think in terms of like the more middle of the pack, so to speak, records from 94, this is a record that the first time I heard it, I probably thought, that was pretty good. I'm glad I heard it. I don't know if I really need to come back to it ever again. And I'm glad that I did pick it for this episode. And I'm glad that I trusted my gut instinct when I saw it pop up on the list. I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe it's the album cover.
Striking album cover. We didn't mention that, but it's an all red and white cover. Typically, this would be that you would just think this is what a black and white picture looks like, but instead of the black ink, it's red ink. Looks awesome. The back cover's like that too. And the LP is red too, which is awesome.
It's kind of like it looks kind of like a 60s rock single. That sort of two-tone, very simple layout, almost like or even like a mod rock revival band, like
Yeah, because it's got them all standing on the cover, which is always another, like, you think of, like, the Living End album covers look like that.
Yeah.
You know,
It looks like a Jam single.
Yeah, it does. It does. It, in some ways, has a little bit of the side-by-side, side-by-side? Side-to-side? The Ray Capo band.
Oh.
Side-to-side? I don't remember. I'm blanking. Which their next record does the same thing. They're standing on the cover. Their 7-inch has them standing on the cover too. That one's a little closer photo. You don't see their feet on that one. Yeah, that's funny.
So I'm really glad that we are talking about this record, and I'm glad that I revisited this record because I got more out of it this time. I think it's cool. I just think it's cool.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, honestly, this record is what I wish more garage rock, garage punk, garage rock revival, whatever, actually sounded like. Because I don't think that it is so fixated on doing the muffled paper towel to robot vocals. And like, you know, it doesn't fixate on the aesthetics of garage rock. It's not like, oh, well, we got to have a shitty sax on here. You know, we got to sound like the Sonics. It's like, yeah, the Sonics are cool. The Kinks are cool. The Jam are cool. You know, the Ramones are cool. You know, it's really just kind of like more or less like continuing the spirit of garage rock, of being a Sonics or an MC5 or a Trogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just being like, this is the budget I have to make a record. And trying to write good, catchy, solid, singable rock songs. You know, it works within limitations, but it's not fetishizing the limitations.
Yeah, when you picked it, I was like, oh, odd choice out of that batch. Because like some of those other records are like a lot bigger. But I do like that you went with this record because it is different. It is more unique than the other stuff that you considered. And even out of that whole year we looked at, this is very different from a lot of that kind of stuff too. So I went into it kind of fresh. We didn't really talk about my past experience. I didn't really have any. Like, I knew the name. I knew they were on Dischord Records. Like, I heard them on the that Dischord Turns 20 compilation, and that's where I found a lot of those bands that I didn't know prior to that. That was a good introduction to the label as a whole, especially if you weren't familiar with like the bands who only did like a 7-inch, you know. So that was like my introduction to them, but I never really dug into them deeper. Like, I would see this album cover occasionally and be like, that's a neat looking cover. And I just assumed it was kind of like, it's probably like a Donna's record or something like that, but not even really thinking about when it came out or what label it was on at the time. But yeah, so I was like, when you chose it, I was like, I hope there's something there. And I was nervous until I found that Please Kill Me article. Really good article. I don't touch any of the stuff about their next record, but they talk about that one too. And a lot of good stuff in that article. It's a really long piece, but it's a really good piece. And I've never really spent any time on that website. I wonder if there's other really good interviews like that there. But I'm with you. I don't think this is the best record of the year. I don't even think it's in like the top 10, but I do really like it. I do think it's a really cool record, and it's an interesting record. You know, I don't think that the three of them have a ton of chops. I don't think they're super technically proficient musicians. Christina might be the most. I feel like she's got a really good singing voice, and I feel like, I guess the bass work is pretty good on here. It's kind of simple. You know, Myra was super into the Ramones. Like, she was super into them, and that's what she was like most famous. Like, she was famous for being super into the Ramones in DC at the time, which is kind of funny because like, weren't all of you? But I guess they all moved on to whatever was the new thing at the moment. And I could see the Ramones being an influence on her bass work because it's fairly like simple, straight ahead bass work, but it does the job. Like, it fits the record really well because like there's layering on there because Christina tells a story about how Don made her record the same guitar part exactly the same 3 times in a row just so they could layer it, and that was a new idea to her.
She has a Ramones stage presence too.
Mm.
She looks like Dee Dee, but she holds her bass like Dee Dee.
Yeah. Low. Yeah.
Yeah. Low slung, neck almost straight up.
Yeah.
She kind of has a Dee Dee haircut too.
I would say maybe the weakest link as far as musicians in the band is probably Marge. Her drumming, it's kind of rough. It's sloppy. She doesn't hit the kit very hard. She tries to do these like syncopated things, and like she just doesn't have the snap and the crispness to it. So it feels it's like it's technically on time, but it's just not always not all the way there.
It's loose. I would
yeah.
say it's pretty on time. I think it is one of the qualities of the band that leans especially towards garage rock revival, garage punk, because she does do some of those kind of caveman beats, you know.
I mean, she tries to get a little more intricate with like those type like things, but her kit sounds like shit too. That drum kit sounds terrible. That snare sounds like a cardboard box. Like, it sounds bad. I think Don and Ian know how to make good sounding records. I think they're like, no, we want it to sound shitty. I think it kind of works for their like aesthetic.
Yeah, Don just sets them up in some ways. As a producer, he's very good at putting a mic in front of sources. I don't think it's his production style to like tune somebody's drums for them, or like try to insist that anybody change their guitar tone to be more commercially accessible.
And even Ian MacKaye as a producer, he's not guiding them as far as like how they should write the songs and play them. He's more of just like trying to help them in areas where they're struggling, like with singing, like, you know, like getting lyrics in there. Cause Myra didn't sing most songs. Christina sings most of the record, and Myra has like one or two songs where she kind of takes lead. And I think for her, it was like tough to sing lead like that. And especially because you're playing these like DIY shows in DC at the time, the sound systems are not going to be great. So you can't even hear what you're really doing. So it's hard to sing. It's hard to sing. So that's another thing too. So, but that being said, like with all the flaws in like performance and like the production choices to kind of keep it a little bit more raw, especially compared to what else is going on at the time, like, you know, there's really good produced stuff on Dischord at this time period. So it's kind of interesting to hear something so lo-fi coming from Dischord at this time. Now, a couple years later, Ian starts to get into like even weirder stuff and more experimental stuff. So then some of that stuff's pretty lo-fi too. But yeah, I will say it's a fun record though. I had a good time listening to it. You know, there's elements of all the stuff we talked about there that I hear, and cool is the word. You said it already. It's a cool record. It looks cool. It's got a cool sleeve. They look cool. Like, I've seen pictures of them from the time. They just have like, you know, Christina's got the baby bangs. I think Myra's got like the bleached hair. Like, they just look cool and stylish for the time in that DIY scene way. You know, it's even a lot of the Riot Grrrl fashion is very similar to what they're wearing at the time. So, and a lot of like homemade stuff, vintage, thrifted stuff. It's what we talked about in the movie Ghost World, where it's just like, for really that movie when it came out, it's like, it feels like it should have been set more in like 95, 96 than like 99, 2000 when it actually came out. But yeah, like just like cool clothes. They look cool as people. What they're playing is cool. It's different from so much of the scene. It's just a cool record. And like, I think there are songs on the album that stand out drastically. As far as like, I got a ton of enjoyment out of is like as a song. It was more just as a whole, the album just works really well for me. And yeah, I mean, I'd say it's as sloppy as like a Bratmobile record at this time. And actually the vocals are better than the Bratmobile album. That's always been my big drawback with Bratmobile, is I do think those vocals aren't very good. It's just how they're recorded more so. They're doing that paper towel tube vocal on that one. Yeah, I just think the overall package is cool and different and unique for the time. Even if there's very little on here that I'm like, I love that song, you know? Lyrically, I tried to look into this stuff. It's, they're not really like abstract lyrics, but they're kind of vague. Like, they're referencing things that happened, but we as the listener don't know the context of what happened or the specific events that happened that inspired the song. It's like subtweeting if it was a song. It's just kind of like, this is clearly about a person and a thing that happened, but it's vague enough that the average person won't know what it is. Maybe like the other person involved or like a close friend would know. But, you know, Don't You Ever feels like it's possibly a relationship song, has lines like, what do you want? Say something. And it's kind of like hinting at this, like, there's someone in a relationship with someone who doesn't know what they want and how frustrating it is to kind of be around them. It could be not a relationship thing. It may just a interpersonal relationship kind of song. Love Shock is kind of a take on the love sick concept. You know, the idea of like, oh, you know, you feel bad when you're lovesick, and it takes it to a more like extreme level where it's like more painful. Like it's like, I'm in love shock. Please, I'm going to die. Like, which is a really fun take on that. Time Expired sounds like a song about an asshole. It's just like some dickhead, because it's like the things you think are funny are just cruel and mean. It's like, oh, okay, I know those guys. Then Don't Censor Me kind of feels a little like scene politics, like being judged for how you look or how you act, or probably even just how you play in this kind of band, and you're still playing with Fugazi and Shudder to Think and Nation of Ulysses. So, and then like Become Your Ghost sounds like, reads kind of like a song of someone talking to their past self, you know, what they thought they were going to be and how they were not. Some reviews from the time I found. Robert Christgau gave it a dud with no review. All right, cool guy. Thanks. What good is that? You just gave it a dud and didn't write anything about it. Tell me what you didn't like about it. Do not get Christgau at all. Trouser Press says, nicely updating the stripped down power and acute melodic skills of Wire with a slightly charming amateurish rhythmic attack. Washington DC Slant 6 offered refreshing primitivism amid the increasingly proggish early 90s Dischord sound. Combo delivers succinct but clunky punk rock, The Combo delivers succinct but clunky punk rock, highlighted by unexpectedly strong pop hooks and occasionally odd instrumental angularities on its debut. While the rhythm section sometimes struggles to keep a steady beat, Bilot is talented enough to offset these setbacks with a rare blend of supreme confidence, breezy attitude, and consistently terrific songs. Washington City Paper said frontwoman Christina Bilot's signature silver-tone guitar made riffs and power chords sound a bit more surfy and pleasant. This is referring to the remaster reissue that came out in the 2000s. And though her voice was occasionally hidden behind distorted guitars and nasal delivery, Bilot was still a better singer than many of her 90s contemporaries, a fact that perhaps more evident on the remaster. In hindsight, the band's Spartan occasionally riffy setup even slightly hinted at the guitar-driven math punk that DC bands like Farrakhet would use as their foundation. I don't know how I feel about that. Farrakhet was like a tight time math-like thing, and Slant 6 are not that.
I don't think Farrakhet was borrowing from
a
garage rock band.
Yeah.
Just sounds like somebody who wanted to be let it be known that they're knowledgeable of DC bands.
Late 90s Dischord, yeah. And then the All-Music review might be the most bizarre review I found, so I thought I would include this here. Slant 6 got their start in the Washington, D.C. scene, where small labels like Dischord, Simple Machines, and Teen Beat relied more on the distribution of vinyl singles than full-scale albums. What? Number one.
Make sense at all. That's not true at all.
Dischord had a shitload of full-length albums. What are you talking about? It gets weirder. So, Soda Pop Ripoff is the sort of album one might expect from such scenes, collecting previous singles and separate recordings. As a result, it's not the sort of album that works as a whole. It's not a collection of singles. It is a record recorded at one time. What are you talking about? In all, Soda Pop Ripoff works almost like a retrospective of a period in the band's career, collecting major work, including great tracks like Double Edged Knife and What Kind of Monster Are You? Those looking for a more album-oriented release should look at In Zambia. What Kind of Monster Are You is from the reissue CD version of the 7-inch. Double Edged Knife is from the record. This is not a collection of songs from different periods. The reviewer knew nothing about this record. And maybe knew that there were some songs at the end. Maybe they didn't understand that it was just a reissue with bonus tracks.
Bonus tracks, yeah.
They don't understand the concept of bonus tracks.
Well, this one or two songs sounds like it's from an entirely different session.
Yeah, it is. From a year earlier. I don't know. I just wanted to include that because it's like, I love finding a bad review from a reputable source. I mean, as reputable as All Music is.
I don't know if All Music is reputable.
They get cited a lot. That's really they just were a good catalog. And at one point, they were a good catalog. I don't even know if they're considered a good catalog now.
All Music feels like
A relic.
like it's not even comparable to like saying certified whatever by Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like,
Or Pitchfork.
The thing people always saying like Rotten Tomatoes is being like, it's like, I don't give a shit about a Rotten Tomatoes score. That's an aggregate.
Yeah.
Yeah, All Music for some reason was enough of a standard to be included on like every Wikipedia
Yeah.
article about an album.
Still are.
But I've never read an All Music review that was good or sounded like it knew what it was talking about.
Yeah. It feels like it's a website that like major labels used to love, and they would just be like, here's the record and the details about the record. It's a database. But the writing was never strong, ever. The bios are bad. The reviews are not very good. It's a weird, messy website. It's got a shitload of pop-ups, too. It's such a bad website. Okay. As far as, like, the record itself, is there really anything else you want to say about, like, the songs?
I don't know. I mean, maybe some of the stuff that stands out the most is not exactly the best material. And I think that's probably, like, the biggest issue with it. The good stuff runs together.
Yeah.
And I would say most of the record is good. It's just towards the end, in particular, the slower stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Just, it doesn't quite do it. And it kind of just makes the record feel longer than it is. It's not even a long record.
No, it's like, is it 30? It's about 30.
But it's a lot of tracks. And that also makes things feel longer.
Mm-hmm.
I do really like Double-Edged Knife, Love Shock.
Yeah.
Don't You Ever. I feel like Poison Arrows Shot at Heroes sounds like a fall song.
Yeah, yeah.
Poison
yeah,
Arrows Shot at Heroes.
That one I couldn't find the lyrics for. For some reason, there are no lyrics for that one online, even though there are lyrics to the song. So that was a weird one. I think it's a Myra song as well. Yeah, I think Blood Song's pretty slow. Become Your Ghost is pretty slow. There's the instrumental song on here. Yeah. I do think the back half is kind of weak. I think Blue Angel's a strong song on the back half. I do think March 6th is a fun closer with the trumpet on there. And the title track I thought was solid. Soda Pop Ripoff. I don't know what that means. I read the lyrics of that song and it just sounds like nonsense. I think it's just words that they like how they sound together. Soda Pop Ripoff. It's nice and punchy.
It makes me think of trying to get a can of soda from a vending machine and eating your quarters.
Yeah. Yeah. Online is very hard to kind of search for this title because they put a weird asterisk in between Soda Pop and Ripoff. Sometimes it's just an asterisk, like the keyboard asterisk, and sometimes it's that weird symbol-looking asterisk thing that I think you can only find in Wingdings or something like that. I don't know where you get that button. It's not on any keyboard I have, so it's I don't know how you put that there.
It's like an alternate text.
Yeah, it is. It does feel like that. So it shows up as two different albums on my Last FM because the Open Scrobbler had it listed two different ways, and I didn't click the same one the second time. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some standouts, and then even the worst stuff is just it's not terrible or anything. It's just it's kind of boring. Well, let's dive into the aftermath. So they released one more album called In Zambia in 1995, also on Dischord Records. That record is supposedly a little bit more gothy. And then the band winds up breaking up in 1995. They had discussed taking a break following a tour of Europe with Fugazi. And then while on that tour, they decided it would be their last show in Leeds. And Marge was tired of playing in the band and wanted to quit. And Myra wanted to move to Hollywood. And so I think Marge winds up going back to London. I think that's where she lives now. Myra does go to Hollywood. She winds up playing in the band Tarot Bolero with Aaron Montaigne of Antioch Arrow and Heroin. She worked with Aaron Montaigne a few times because she did another band called Decapitated Lovers with him as well. So it's just very funny to me that she moved from DC to, I guess that would be, is it Antioch or a San Diego band? You like?
Yes.
So she moved from one local scene to another local scene and started playing with him a lot, which is funny. She moved around a bunch, lived in New York at some point. I think she is, I don't know where she is now, but Christina was not happy with the breakup because she thought that the band had a lot of potential and should still continue. And she would go on to play in the band called Insider Spider, which featured Guy Picciotto. You get to just be in a band with Guy. And here's my favorite little piece of information. Amy Dumas, a.k.a. pro wrestler Lita.
What?
I had no idea that Lita was in a band with Guy of Fugazi while Fugazi was a thing. Was still an active band. I knew Lita was into like punk rock. That was kind of her thing, but like, what? That makes her so much cooler. I always liked Lita, and she always seemed cool in general. Just like she was into punk rock. Like she had a wild life too. Like she traveled all over the world. I think she like lived in South America at one point. She lives there now. I think she lives in Central America now. She just bought a big old house with her WWE money, but she lived there before she was even a wrestler. And I think she like learned lucha style first, which is why she was put with Essa Rios before she became the Hardy Boys liaison and Matt Hardy's girlfriend and whatever happened there. But yeah, just very funny to me. I had no idea she was in a band with Guy. That is insane to me. And so then Christina then later plays in Quixotic and the band The Casual Dots. Casual Dots has Kathy Wilcox, Bikini Kill. And then Marge Marshall would go on to form the fashion line Baby Teeth. That name sounded familiar to me. I wonder if I didn't look it up. Let's see if I can find Baby Teeth fashion.
Is it Teith?
It wasn't where I found it. That's like a Phoenix thing. I don't know what that is. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't exist anymore.
Might not exist. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So yeah, that is the sum of the Slant 6 story. I highly recommend people check out that article. It is a really, really good article. But did we win?
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Definitely think we won. It's a cool, different record. What would you rate it?
I'm going to give it a 4 because I enjoyed it more coming back to it. I think I'll enjoy it more if I come back to it again. I find the whole story interesting. I think it deserves more attention. I think it deserves more credit. It might technically be more like a 3.75, but I'm going to go 4. I'm going to go up to a whole star. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed coming back to it. I was charmed more by it this time than my first listen to it.
Yeah, I don't think I'd listened to it before. I don't think it was one I'd heard, but I'm going to give it a 3.5. That's kind of where I lived. The lack of any like songs really standing out to me is like something I would really wanted to come back to was part of the problem. I think the overall package was really good. Everything together works really well, but yeah, not enough hooks for me. And it is a little sloppy in ways that are like, it didn't distract too much from the record, but it's definitely a little sloppy. But yeah, I definitely I'm going 3.5 though. I had a good time listening to it, reading about it, and learning about them. They seem like really cool people, and they've just kind of stayed busy too, even after the band ended. So yeah, good pick. I liked it. Good choice. All right, well that will do it. So thank you so much. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening, and you can follow us anywhere on social media at punklautopod. We have a voicemail line 202-688-PUNK where you can call and leave a voicemail, and we'll play it on the show. We also have an email address you can email to punklautopod@gmail.com. And where can we find you, Dylan?
You can find me at Husker Dylan on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Major Awards Band. Most of those places.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Like we said, no regular episode next week, but we should have a guest list, and then we'll be back to regular scheduled the week after. So thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.